lot of the surgeons that I consulted with didn't really take me seriously. I had been told that I wanted my legs straightened just so I could look better. And that was far from, I would not voluntarily go in to have my legs broken just to look like I had straight legs. That was not the reason that I was there. Once I started explaining to the doctors of how it was affecting my daily activities, so for example, I am having a really hard time getting dressed in the morning because of the pain in my legs, or I can't step into the shower in the tub anymore because of the pain that I'm experiencing in my hips. Once I was very clear about how it was affecting my daily occupations, I felt like I was taken more seriously, honestly.
You might be able to relate to this. What happens when your health makes everyday tasks feel utterly impossible? How do you find balance when it feels like everything is out of alignment, literally and figuratively? Hey, Tim here, and welcome back to the Invisible Condition podcast, where we focus on advocacy and the realities of living with invisible conditions. Together, we will end the stigma of invisible conditions by empowering voices, and today's voice is brought to us by Kait. Kait lives with Miserable Malalignment Syndrome, a condition that severely impacts her daily life physically, mentally, and emotionally. From her favorite activities like running to her work as an occupational therapist and even everyday tasks like driving or shopping, everything was disrupted. But through determination and self-advocacy, Kait not only fought for a diagnosis, but also discovered the concept of occupational balance, the ability to manage time and energy across all areas of life in a meaningful way. Her story offers practical insights on advocating for yourself, navigating health appointments, and finding joy again when your life feels unbalanced. Have a listen. Kait, this is just another classic Invisible Condition episode where I should have hit record probably 10 minutes ago because we've already had a great conversation. So we're going to repeat a lot of that for our listeners, just, kind of give our listeners a little hook there to stay around. But thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, we connected on Instagram and you shared your journey and your story. Share with the audience just a bit about who you are, what do you live with, and what has made you want to speak out on a different podcast other than my show, but other shows as well.
Definitely. So I am a runner, actually a rehabbing runner. I have been going through multiple surgeries, but my ultimate goal is to get back to running. I love soccer and tennis and hiking, anything really active. I am an occupational therapist as well. I have been working specifically in the schools for the last 7 years, but I do have some experience working in the hospital too, and also experience being an OT for myself.
Wow. So experience not just in the workplace or in a school setting, but for yourself. So tell us a little bit about the condition you live with.
I have something called Miserable Malalignment Syndrome, and that is actually the name. And it's a very accurate description of how I feel. But I have had pain in my legs since I was a kid, but it was just normal to me. I didn't know that people didn't have pain in their legs. And I thought because I was so active, maybe it was just from running or playing soccer. But it wasn't until I was about 23 when my hip pain became really bad. And so I went to see an orthopedic surgeon and I was diagnosed with hip impingements and labral tears. So I ended up having surgery to fix those impingements. So essentially what they did was shave the head of my femur so it fits better in my hip socket. And they stitched up some of the tears in the cartilage. That's your labrum. And I thought that was going to be the end of my journey after those surgeries. But I continued to have pain. And it wasn't until I was about 27 when I felt like I could barely walk anymore. Like I had kind of like this permanent limp, and it would not go away. And I decided that I really needed to focus on like finding the answer as to why this was still happening. And it took multiple opinions from multiple surgeons. A lot of the surgeons were like, oh, nothing's really wrong, like, because they were only like looking at my hip joint and not my entire leg. And I finally found a surgeon who looked at the angles of my legs, and he determined that my femurs, which is like the your thigh bone, and then my tibias were abnormally rotated, and that was what was causing a lot of my pain.
That sounds like an incredible diagnosis journey. And, having a surgery thinking it's going to be fine, right? You just move on with your life. You're going to continue playing soccer, continue running, doing all the sports and the activities that you like, and diagnosed with a condition that starts with the word miserable. And so how did you wrap your head around that? Just even that language is challenging.
I mean, at first I thought it was a joke. Like I kind of wanted to laugh, but then I was like, no, like this is how I've been feeling. And almost like a bit of relief, like hearing that that was the name, because it like validated how I had been feeling for so long, you know?
That's such a theme with guests I've had on the show, is that advocacy journey just to get a diagnosis, multiple doctors. I'm curious what fueled that to not want to just throw up your hands and say, I guess this is as good as it gets. This is what I have to live with.
I mean, I think so. Like in between, so I had 3 surgeries initially before I got diagnosed with miserable malalignment, and I think like in between each of those surgeries, I like started running again, because that was my like ultimate passion. Like I couldn't imagine a life without that. So like I really think that like my desire to run again and engage in my favorite leisure activity was always greater than like the pain that I was feeling or the frustration of going through surgery.
So that ability to run, just, not just, it was therapeutic for you. It wasn't just an activity. It was that therapy. And you've had numerous surgeries now. And I understand that, well, the day we're recording this, you're got to go for another surgery.
Going for it. Yeah, I will be going for my 10th surgery in about 3 months.
We talked offline about, when you go for a procedure numerous times, often we, and I'm generalizing, but there's some stigma attached to that from others, unintentional, of, oh, well, you've gone through this before, it should be a breeze. Or, for me specifically, I live with Crohn's disease. I go for colonoscopies way too often. And I often have people who joke about that. And it's still mentally exhausting and hard and frustrating. How has this journey been for you?
I agree. It's been really hard and scary. Like I think people, like with my situation of multiple surgeries, I think people think like, and same with what you've been going through, it seems routine at this point. Like it's just another surgery. Like, but it's not. Like every time I'm told like it's time to schedule your next surgery, it only gets harder for me. I think too, because it's been a lot of like working towards recovering after the last surgery. And then as soon as I start to feel a little bit like myself again, like I'm getting those favorite activities back, I'm going in for another surgery. And so that like constant, like push and pull of, like starting to do my favorite things and then them like disappearing again is really hard. And I think like that's affected my mental health. Absolutely.
Well, and that kind of leads to the theme of what we were talking about for this episode and the direction we want to take this show. And we're talking about occupational balance, or just balance in general, as well as that not just if you live with something apparent or non-apparent, there is almost, dare I say, balance in our minds, that mental struggle. I asked the question, does balance even exist? And we'll get into that after. But, when you said you start getting back into things, you back into your routines, and now you have to prep mentally for that next surgery.
Right.
What is your process in that? And in that vein of occupational balance, or maybe we should just actually define occupational balance and then get into that process.
Sure. So, occupational balance is being able to balance your various activities in your day to day life and also the responsibilities that you have too. So, this can include like work and social life and your favorite leisure activities, social participation, even just like your daily activities like going to the grocery store or getting dressed or any kind of like self-care tasks. Those are all like your occupations. And so it's about finding the balance of time and energy too, which I think is very important for people with chronic conditions, is being able to like balance that energy, because you don't want to burn through your energy and then end up miserable later or something like that. Like, so finding that balance. And I also think it's like really like it's easy to get wrapped up in some of the things that people with chronic conditions go through. Like, I mean, balancing like our medical appointments and maybe spending a little extra time at work, or like paying medical bills, like all of that can be draining physically and emotionally too. So, working on like creating a balance so we can find like a more fulfilled and meaningful life rather than like only using our energy towards our conditions.
So many questions just in how do we figure out that balance? Before we get there, I'm just curious, what has worked for you? What has, do you have a big schedule on your fridge and say, this is where I need to insert energy? And then when we have these almost spikes in activities that will take our mental energy, like prepping for a surgery or going for a procedure or a hard medical appointment that you need to advocate for yourself.
I mean, this is what's worked for me, and I don't think it does not work for everybody, but I am pretty much like a planner, maybe a little bit obsessive of like how I schedule things. But like for me, it helps to see things kind of like laid out on a calendar. Like, I know that this medical appointment is going to zap my physical and emotional energy, so I'm not going to plan any other like hard things in my day. But then also like on days where like I feel like it's my schedule is a little bit more open, maybe taking more time to do like my favorite activities, spending a day that's like I really focus on doing the things that I like really love to do and using my energy that way. I also like, I think a big thing for me, I like before I kind of like hit a bottom at one point where like after one of my surgeries, like my life completely like turned upside down and I wasn't like finding meaning in anything that I was doing in my day. And it actually wasn't until I went to therapy and this like was kind of brought up like to me that like I wasn't really trying in life and I wasn't like doing anything that was meaningful. I made it my mission to at least do one meaningful activity every single day. And so like during my recoveries, like my recoveries have been very lengthy. Like essentially I like my bones have to be broken and realigned. And so like that's quite the process. And I have a lot of downtime after those surgeries, but I have started to like find things to do every single day that like I actually enjoy doing, even though it might like look a little bit different than what I've been doing before. So like for example, like I might like decide to learn something new. Like I started taking up learning a new language or like reading new things and writing. Like I started writing a memoir and writing poetry, like things that I would have never done before. And like now that I have the time to like do that, like I'm finding those more meaningful activities and I actually really enjoy doing it. So I think that's a huge thing for me is like every morning, like when I wake up, it's like, okay, like what is a meaningful activity that I can do for myself today?
I'm almost a little lost for words, because I think that's profound in its simplest form, where waking up and reflecting on the what brings you joy, what meaningful thing can you get done today, in the next hour, in the
Mhm.
next week, and realigning our thoughts around that.
Right.
I want to thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing. you know uh, Being at a low is something I'm very, very familiar with, uh, and I can't imagine just your therapist is telling you this, and how you then use that to fuel what you're doing now. That's It takes a lot of self reflection and even self advocacy for yourself.
Right. Right. And I honestly think like if she wasn't honest with me about that, I don't know like if I, would have come to this myself, even though I'm an occupational therapist and like my job is to help people, with their everyday meaningful activities. Like sometimes when it's yourself, like that gets a little bit lost. And I'm really thankful that she brought that to my attention. Um, and that now I have like the knowledge to like and the drive. Like I think I lost the drive to, to do those things, but now I do. Like the first like 2 hours of my morning are almost always spent like doing things that I like.
That's amazing. I love that. I was actually thinking this morning, the morning we're recording this, that I need to go to bed earlier so I can get up earlier, and so I can have quiet time. My kids call it Tim time, and so yeah, I've got two small kids at home, and it gets loud and busy at my house starting around 6:30, 6:45, and having that quiet time, that self reflection time by yourself, the time to battle out what's going in your mind. I'm a huge advocate for that. Some people journal, some people write, some people like myself. I record little, I call them journal entries. I record whatever's comes my stream of consciousness, just to get it out. Um, I think that is a good foundation for how to find that balance,
Right.
because our days can be overrun and become overwhelmed very quickly. So when we go back to that thought of occupational balance, and it's defined as all those activities within your day. If someone is struggling with balance, where's a good place to start?
A really good place to start is kind of taking inventory of like what you're doing in your day, first of all, and kind of like see like where you're spending most of your time and your energy. And then also like where you want to be spending your time and energy. Like, cause all things that like, there's things that we all need to do, right? Certain responsibilities, but then there's also things that like what you want to do and making sure that you can kind of, balance that as well. So like I actually remember in occupational therapy school, one of the very first things that we learned was about occupational balance, and we were told to like draw a circle like on a piece of paper and then split it into, I think it was like 8 parts. And one was like social and leisure and work and education and all those sorts of things, and then we kind of had to like fill in like where we spend most of our time. And oh, I remember mine was totally out of whack. Like I felt like I barely spent any time, with social or sleep, things like that are, they are really important. And I just wasn't really, focusing my energy on that. But kind of taking a similar approach and like thinking about like what it is that you do in your day, and kind of like charting it out and like seeing how you can balance it. For me, I like the visual, and like I said, like I like to use my planner too, my calendar, and just kind of seeing, like even just like writing it out helps me see like where I'm spending my time. Um, but yeah, just kind of having an honest conversation about like with yourself about where you're spending your time and your energy and where you want to go from there.
That's amazing. I'm going to find some inspiration to create a resource for folks who are listening,
Mhm.
because I could vision this circle. I do some leadership and career coaching on the side, and we work on using something very similar just to draw out, what's giving you energy and what's not giving you energy. Mm-hmm. And kind of in the same way, when you think of your day to day, even maybe you're in the workplace, or maybe you're not, or maybe you're working through your health journey. What activities are giving you energy and which activities are draining your energy? And if all of your activities are draining your energy, how are you recharging? What is that recharge? Finding that is incredibly important, because you need that data. You need that to go into your medical appointments. Because, one of the ways that we were chatting about when it comes to advocacy is being able to go into your doctor and with your data and explain things to them. How do you do this? What has worked for you and served you?
I mean, relating it back to my diagnosis journey, a lot of the surgeons that I consulted with didn't really take me seriously. I had been told that I wanted my legs straightened just so I could look better. And that was far from, I would not voluntarily go in to have my legs broken just to look like I had straight legs. That was not the reason that I was there. But once I started explaining to the doctors of how it was affecting my daily activities, so for example, I am having a really hard time getting dressed in the morning because of the pain in my legs, or I can't step into the shower in the tub anymore because of the pain that I'm experiencing in my hips. Once I was very clear about how it was affecting my daily occupations, I felt like I was taken more seriously, honestly.
I like that because it's tangible, right? It's something that when we go to our doctor's office and actually coming in with some data about how this is impacting, that is so incredibly powerful. And I had a doctor on the show, and she had said, and I've quoted her, misquoted her, I'm sure, a few times now, but she, around the gist of it is, when you come to your appointment, don't tell me you're doing fine, because you're here because you're not doing fine. And even if you're having a good day today, don't tell me that you're having a good day, because I'm going to base that all our conversation around that.
Right.
Bring in that data. How is this impacting you? How is this affecting your life? What is happening? Somebody I know was telling me that they live with a condition and it's affecting now their ability to drive. And because it's affecting their ability to drive, they're not able to get to appointments. They're not able to see family members. They're not able to go to other appointments. And they had to advocate and bring that anecdotal data in to now get scheduled for a surgery that's upcoming. But before that, it was, this person was told, oh, you're too young for this surgery. And, similar, I think, to what you were saying, oh, you just want straight legs to look better. It's no, this is impacting my quality of life.
Right. Something that just popped into my mind is how I have been told on numerous occasions to just not run again, but I don't like to take that for an answer, because it really affects me mentally. That was my greatest coping mechanism. And so even if something seems like it's, as simple as, oh, you don't have to run again. Just don't do it. And you can still live your life. I mean, still advocating for finding answers. And if it's something that you really, in my case, I was willing to have these surgeries so I can run again. I mean, it was affecting all my other occupations. Don't get me wrong. It was affecting my work and the way I did all of my activities because of the pain. But, sometimes people will be quick to say, well, it's because you're a runner, kind of blame it on that. But I think, being honest too, with your doctors of how it is affecting you mentally, it's okay to say that, the pain is affecting you, or because you're not able to do your favorite activities anymore.
It's easy for someone to say, oh, just stop that activity or find a new activity, find a new hobby. I used to mountain bike, and the day I sold my mountain bike, I cried. I did. It was a hobby that I loved. I wasn't good at it. I fell off a lot. I probably shouldn't do it because I was destined to hurt myself, but it's something that I just found immense peace doing. And when I was at my lowest low, I just knew that I had to take a pause and a multi-year pause. I bought a different bike. It serves me well. I still miss the mountains, but having to give that up in that moment is hard. And I think that's also touches on, we think of balance. It touches on that that mental health aspect that often is unseen. Again, when you have something apparent or non-apparent, and that often gets missed when we even talk about our conditions in the workplace or in the school system. What is out of balance, and what has that had, or how has that impacted your mental health?
I definitely think, like having those like honest conversations like with other people too, like sharing your experience and like what you're going through, like that will help people kind of have a different understanding, about like how it does affect not only like your, physically, but your mental health as well.
Yeah, and I think it ties right into that idea of and that topic of occupational balance, because I can't get this image of the circle out of my mind now. I'm going to spend some time researching one, and for those who are listening, I'm going to commit to creating something on the website. So stay tuned for that. But when you think about this, I just think of how to hand that into even to your manager in the workplace, right? It's, hey, I got to go for another surgery. Oh, you should be used to this. It's like, well, no, this is how I'm feeling right now. This is, physically, sure, but mentally, this is how I'm feeling.
Right.
And
this is where I'm at in the moment.
Couldn't have said it any better. And, that big question, does balance exist? I think that's a hard one.
It is. I mean, honestly, I think it's a lifelong journey. Like, are we ever going to find the perfect balance? Probably not.
And if somebody's trying to sell you a book that, things change. Yeah. If somebody's trying to sell you a book that says it does, I don't know.
Right. No. And the thing is, like, especially people with chronic conditions, like our symptoms change by the minute, by the hour. It's going to be a constant, like readjustment of how we're doing things.
Yeah. I think what's popping in my mind right now is, I think balance will exist when we're living our values. So balance exists when we're living our values. And
beautiful.
And often what I have found is and again, this is a big general sweeping statement, don't necessarily know how to identify our core values. But when we identify our values, and we're living in those values and making decisions based out of those values, that's how we can achieve and strive for what balance looks like in my life, which is going to be very different than your life.
Right. And that's, the other good point is it's like everybody's so like individual, that it's not going to be the same, the same sort of balance. Like everybody, has their own favorite activities or has their own like needs and own values.
So I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit, because, you're getting ready for your next surgery. Mm-hmm. You're a runner. Mm-hmm. I'm not a runner. I don't understand running. I've tried running. I think I'm pretty in shape. I'll hike a mountain, no problem. Well, there's problems for sure, but I'll go hiking. I just, somebody who's not a runner, when you're out there on the trail or on the street, what goes through your mind? What are you feeling?
Honestly, I feel the most myself, if that makes sense. I can't even like describe like how things just change for me. Like I feel like I'm at like my happiest. Like I have the most joy when I'm running. I feel like when I'm running towards, a goal kind of thing. I'm very
Hmm.
like goal driven. Um, I feel, at peace. Like when I'm out in nature, like I love running on the trails specifically. It just like, it feels like home, and there's like no other way to explain that for me. And I mean, I have been running since I was 11 years old, like running seriously since I was 11. And I mean, that's been my coping mechanism for everything that I faced in life. I mean, up until like these surgeries when I obviously couldn't turn to that anymore. I mean, that was just what I did anytime I had a problem or a bad day or whatever. It's, oh, put on your running shoes and go.
I love that. It's for those who are listening. Kait's face just lit up when she was talking about running. I love that. That's
My mind
there's.
just went to the trails. Like
I now
I could
so
see myself.
distracted. uh, I love that, and that's your mission to get back there, and
Mhm.
maybe somebody's listening to this and is struggling maybe to find that balance, or maybe they've had to give something up, and maybe temporarily or maybe permanently. I'm curious what thoughts would you like to share with someone who might be feeling that?
What you just said about, feeling like you've had to give something up either permanently or temporarily. I think there's also ways that you can kind of like adjust your favorite activity. I mean, that's like a big thing that occupational therapists do too, is okay, like how can we get you to engage in your favorite activity? But like in my like personal experience and what I'm going through. So like one of the ways like that I've been kind of getting back into that, like, imagining that I'm running again sort of thing. What I like to do is get on a bike, like a stationary bike. Like I can do that, after a certain amount of time, like with my recoveries. I'll get on the bike and I will like pretend like I'm running again. So, I mean, yes, I'm not actually running again, but like I can kind of like visualize myself like on the trails. And sometimes, I mean, I might look a little ridiculous, but I'll even kind of like move my arms like I'm running and just pretend like that I'm there. And like that for me has helped me, just like adapting the way I'm doing things. Um, I mean,
Hmm.
and that could be, whatever your favorite like occupation is, even if you can't do it, like maybe you can like modify something in some way or visualize yourself, like doing that, it might be helpful.
Yeah, even getting on that exercise bike, I'm looking over at mine, which is staring at me now. Of like, come on, Tim, it's time to get on, go for a ride. Maybe even putting on or setting up an image in your space to kind of get you in that visual space. But also, I'm here in Canada, and there's a nonprofit society called the Neil Squire Society, and they specialize in assistive technology. So maybe your life has changed. Maybe you're not able to do those activities or use certain parts of your body in the way that you used to.
Right.
And I'm confident, and I'm going to do some research. It'll be in the show notes in the US as well, and in other countries where there's organizations that support you and are here to support you to find that balance, whatever that balance looks like for you, whether it's running, hiking, cycling, cooking, playing video games, whatever that balance is. It's so important not just to advocate for yourself and your appointments, but advocate for yourself, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right. Advocate for your occupations too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So a lot of great resources I think are going to come out of this episode. And Kait, I know that people are going to be interested to track you down, just to learn about what you've done for your balance, for how you prepare for your surgeries, and how you not just bring your advocacy to the world through social media, but also into your work as an occupational therapist. Where can people find you?
I mostly just use Instagram. I'm at aligned K and then the number 8.
Okay, aligned K8.
Aligned 8.
Don't worry, it's going to be linked into the show notes as well. And I asked this to all the people that come on is, invisible condition. There's an incredible amount of stigma that surrounds invisible conditions. And the reason why I started this project was the bold vision to end the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of how do we end the stigma, what comes to mind?
I think by, sharing our stories and our experiences with other people, we're encouraging more of like a supportive environment and an environment that like everybody feels, valued. So I think, as much as you possibly can feel comfortable with like sharing your story and being honest about how you are feeling physically and mentally, like we discussed, because I mean, especially with invisible illnesses, like it's people don't always like understand because they can't see it, So as much as we can, continue to have these honest conversations with each other about it, I think that would be very, very helpful.
I completely agree. Telling stories, and it doesn't, for folks who are listening, you might just want to tell your story to a friend. Start
Right.
there. Maybe
Right.
you want to tell it to yourself in your mirror. Maybe you want to write it down. Maybe you want to start a social media account. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Any way to end the stigma, we have to tell our stories, whether it's to one person or 100 people.
Right.
And also, this is just the foundation for your own advocacy. And it also ties in, I think, with what you were saying is how does this impact your life?
Mm-hmm.
Not just saying, I'm tired today. It's, I'm tired and now I'm not able to do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
That has a profound impact when we can actually add the impact to that statement. So, Kait, I appreciate you that you reached out, and I'm grateful that we connected. And any last thoughts before we wrap up?
One very important thing, like through all of this, is to make sure that we're showing compassion towards ourselves. And if we can't, if we feel like we cannot engage in a occupation that we really wanted to get done that day, that we give ourselves the grace to, to not do that and to rest if we need to, or, to switch things up, be sort of flexible in the way that we're thinking and not be so hard on ourselves if we can't get that done in a day.
That's great. Practice that self-compassion, which as you know and have shared, it often is hard, especially when we've received news and that we might have expected or might not have. But self-compassion, it's a great place to end. For those who are listening, maybe you've got questions about how do I do this? How do I advocate for myself? How do I find balance? How do I identify my values? How do I find and figure out what compassion looks like to me? Reach out to myself, to Kait. And if I don't know the answers, I'll connect you with somebody who can help you. Please, if you feel inclined, share this episode with your friends, your family, with those who might need to hear it. And what helps us and this show get into more and more people's ears and eyes is to like and subscribe on your platform, whether it's Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Please do so. With that, I hope everyone has an amazing day, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you soon. Take care.